We stopped that night at the foot of a high mountain. The Bedouin told me, "Now is your chance to repay me for my kindness to you and your family. Climb to the top of this mountain and wait for the sun to rise. At dawn, turn to the east and recite the morning prayer. Then you may come down. But do not fall asleep, for the ground up there is poisonous." Despite my pain, hunger, and thirst, I knew that I did owe my master much, so I dragged myself to the top of the hill. But I was so tired when I got there that I could not help falling deep asleep. At dawn, I woke in the most terrible pain. My entire body was swollen and aching, and I was feverish. I had been poisoned by that noxious place. But I forced myself to rise and make the morning prayer. My shadow loomed out to the west. I started to descend the mountain, but could not keep my feet. I fell and rolled all the way down, adding bruises and cuts to the rest of my ills. I landed at my master's feet, and all he said was, "Ah, there you are. Come and help me dig. At the farthest point where your shadow touched the ground, we shall find a great treasure." We dug and uncovered a marble tomb with an inscription that I could not read. Inside the tomb, we found human bones and a manuscript, inscribed in gold on the purple-stained skin of a gazelle. "You hold it in your hands, O King of Time." My master, who had much hidden knowledge, could read the manuscript. As he did so, his eyes began to sparkle with an inner fire. "Now I know the way," he cried. "Hassan Abdallah, rejoice! We shall be the first of mortal men to set foot in many-columned Iram, the city of Shaddad bin Ad. There we shall find the red powder that makes it possible to turn base metals into precious ones. We shall be rich!" "I do not want to be rich," I replied. "I just want to feel better." "Nonsense," said the Bedouin. But he did stop long enough to harvest some cacti, whose broad, spiky leaves concealed juicy flesh that satisfied both hunger and thirst. As soon as we had refreshed ourselves, we remounted our camels. We rode for 3 days and 3 nights, following the directions in the manuscript, until we came to a glittering river, which threw back the rays of the sun like a mirror. It was a river of mercury, and it was spanned only by a slender crystal bridge with no handrail. It was so narrow and steep that only an idiot would have set foot on it. My master stepped confidently onto the bridge, and I had to follow, trusting in the mercy of Allah. We came safely to the other side and walked on for some hours until we came to the entrance to a black valley, in the murk of which I could see the dark shapes of serpents and worse. I cast myself to the ground in despair, but the Bedouin cried, "Be brave! You are not going to die, but will return to Cairo richer than the Sultan himself. You must perform just one more task." "What is that?" I asked. Page 6. "You must enter the valley and wait until you see a vast serpent with black horns. Using your skill with the bow, you must slay it and bring me its brain and heart. Leave the rest to me." When I came back with the head and heart of that dread creature, still trembling with terror and exhaustion, the Bedouin took them from me without a word. He had built a fire with dry grass and dead wood, and now he took a diamond from his pocket, and concentrating the rays of the sun through it, kindled flame. Then he produced an iron pot and a small ruby phial. "In this phial," he said, "is the blood of the phoenix." He uncorked the vial and poured its contents into the iron pot, together with the heart and brain of the serpent. Then he put the pot on the fire, and opening a manuscript, began to mutter unintelligible words. Suddenly he rose to his feet and bared his shoulders. He ordered me to rub his shoulders with the mixture in the pot, and as I did so, wings began to sprout from his shoulder blades. They grew and grew until, when he flapped them, he began to rise from the ground. Fearing to be left behind, I clutched at his legs, so when he soared into the sky, I was carried up too. I do not know how long we flew, but at length we found ourselves above a mighty plain of powdered gold, in the midst of which rose a wonderful city of palaces and gardens. "At last," cried the Bedouin, Many-columned Iram, city of dreams, in which no man has ever set foot. Come!" And with that, he swooped down into the city. As soon as we landed, his wings disappeared. No words of mine can describe that place. It was built of every precious stone, and at its heart was a garden where the air was scented with musk, and the flowers were fed by rivers of wine, of rose essence, and of honey. In a pavilion in that garden was a throne of gold and ruby, and on that throne was the small gold casket that you now hold, O Sultan. The Bedouin took the casket and opened it. It was full of red powder. He cried out in exultation, "See, here is the vital ingredient that I have sought for so many years." I said, "Master, throw away the dirty stuff and fill the box with some of the jewels that lie in heaps all over the city." He answered, "Fool, this powder is the very soul of riches. A single grain of it can turn any metal into pure gold. With this box, I can rule the world and turn kings into slaves." I asked him, "And can this powder add a single day to your life, or buy back a single day of your past?" He replied, "Allah alone is great." We left that city, carrying nothing but the casket of powder and the manuscript. The Bedouin forbade me to take any of the jewels that tempted me at every turn, telling me that to filch a single one would bring instant death. Page 7. And so we returned to Cairo. Ill health and ill luck dogged me every step of my way, while my master whistled along without a care. And when I found my home again, it was to learn that my beloved wife and children, for whom I had sold myself into slavery, were all dead. For I still carried at my belt, though I did not know it, the keys of misery and suffering. So I went to live with the Bedouin in his palace on the banks of the Nile. No longer his slave, but instead his companion. He taught me much of the hidden science, including the skill to read the magical tongue in which the manuscript is written, though he would not let me read the manuscript itself. He taught me, too, all he knew of the science of alchemy, and let me help him use the precious red powder to turn base metal into gold. For all the Bedouin's kindness, I did not prosper, but remained racked by misfortunes of all kinds, while he seemed to live a charmed life, like one who, on earth, is already in paradise. But death comes to all, and one day I found him lying senseless, with the smile on his face of one born under a happy star. I mourned his loss, and when I buried him, I shed tears as for a father. I was his heir, so it fell to me to sort out his affairs. I opened the gold casket, the source of his wealth, and found that most of its contents had been used up. All that remains is the powder that you see there now. I was not concerned with that, but I was eager to read the precious manuscript, which I had never been allowed to see. When I read it, I understood why. For the manuscript, which tells the wise how to enter many-columned Iram, also tells of the keys of destiny, and so at last I understood that the Bedouin had needed me, not for my skill with a bow, but to keep the keys of misery and suffering, leaving him the glory, the happiness, and the wisdom. At once I snatched the fateful keys from my belt and melted them down into a crucible. Then I searched everywhere for the other 2 keys, but I could not find them. Before I could enjoy any of my new wealth, I was arrested by your father, Sultan Thailand, who had heard that I had the secret of turning base metal into gold. He took the casket of red powder and the manuscript and tried to force me to tell him their uses. When I would not, he cast me into prison. "What an extraordinary tale!" exclaimed Sultan Muhammad. "It seems to me that, even without the Bedouin's keys, you have found your share of wisdom, and now deserve your share of glory and happiness. Therefore, you shall be my Grand Wazir. Together we shall use the rest of the red powder to make gold, and with that gold we shall build a mosque in praise of Allah, the all-knowing, the compassionate, who lives and does not die." Page 8. Then Scheherazade lapsed into silence. King Shirar, much moved by her tale, said, "Truly, each man carries his fate around his neck, and cannot escape it." Scheherazade said nothing. King Shirar said, "Come, tell me a lighter tale." And Scheherazade said, "I have told all of my tales. Now you can cut off my head." But King Shirar replied, "We come from Allah, and we return to him. Let the headsman's sword rust in its sheath, for just as the red powder turned base metal into gold, your stories, Scheherazade, have turned my base desires into love, which is all the wealth any man needs."